everyone, my name is Olivia and welcome to this week's episode of the Uber Cordero Show. So this week is a continuation of last week where we're speaking about China and the Sino-African relations. And so today we want to really understand, why is China interested in Africa? And so we'd really like to understand, Uber, China is big in Africa. Trade volumes have increased by over 700% since 2000. Could you kindly tell us why China is so interested in Africa?
Oh, thank you, Olivia, for a wonderful introduction. I'd love to talk a little bit about China because it's an ongoing thing, and it requires that we understand China a little more. And in 2008, there was this African leaders meeting in China, in Beijing, called the China-African Cooperation, where China pledged to donate $600 billion annually to the African continent. That's a massive number that has never been done by Europeans or Americans in Africa. And this just goes to tell you how much China has at stake in the continent of Africa. And China's foreign direct investment has increased over the years in significant numbers, accompanied with trade volume, which you have accurately stated, 700% since 2000. And China's focus is on key areas. One of them is Africa's raw material. And as you know, Olivia, Africa is still the world's richest continent in terms of raw material that have been found and those that have not been found. So, for example, Africa has control of about 90% of the world's platinum, has about 70% of the world's coltan, 85% of the world's uranium that have been discovered, and quantifiable amount of oil and natural gas. The point here is that these resources are fundamental to development and industrialization. Coltan, for example, which is a lot of it is found in Great Lakes region of Africa, particularly Congo, Rwanda, Burundi area as well. This mineral is a constituent part of cell phones and computers. And without coltan, we won't have these cell phones. So China want to get ahead and want to capture these resources so they can have an edge over other countries in industrialization. And whoever controls technology controls the next world order. And Africa is emerging. Also, African countries are growing, and China sees the potential that Africa is going to be a big player with a market. Some countries like Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Angola are having this bulge of middle class growth, and China wants to tap into it, provide resources that the pretentious middle class likes to consume. So that's just the economic part of China's interest in Africa. There's also political interest. China obviously wants to be a superpower. In fact, about 4 or 5 years ago, they set up a military base in the Somali country of Djibouti. And the Djibouti is fascinating because it's at the intersection of Africa and Asia, right next to the Gulf of Aden. And also France and Britain, as well as the Americans, have a military base there. And China constructed theirs for a tune of $590 million. So China not playing. They're really interested politically, economically, and also culturally in Africa. Yes.
So what makes them compatible with Africa? Or like, what would you say are the similarities of China and Africa?
Well, that's a great question and kind of continues on what I started out last week. In that China's biggest rival in terms of pursuing Africa from Asia is India. And India has this organic connection with Africa, in that the Indians had been trading with Africa before European powers came in a much more consistent basis. And when the Brits came, British and the French, the British actually brought a lot of Indians in South Africa and East Africa. And probably in Kenya they are the biggest minorities. So China sees a threat in India and they want to displace it. They already done a lot. Almost they're fighting in Asia right now. There's a war on a tension that could lead to a war between China and Asia. But going back to the similarities, one of the biggest similarities between Africa and China is what in political science is called patronage. The idea that a certain class control the politics of a nation and once you capture the state, then you can distribute resources and gifts and opportunities based on loyalty. That is a classical way you can look at the Communist Party of China. It basically operates as a big patronage network. China has also this history of colonialism. Like I said in the last show, Japan colonized them. A lot of European powers also colonized China. So these are similarities in that Africa experienced the same thing. It has a lot, headquarters of patronage politics is Africa. Colonialism, a big impact in Africa that it had. But in addition to that, there's also negative elements like corruption. This idea of deals that are done without clear channels, without transparency. China has those too. So you can see why these people are bedfellows.
Yeah.
But what is different is that in China, the state is big and it is very powerful. So it has what in political science called state capacity that many African countries do not have. And they can organize their politics and their economic development based on this. So that's why they have managed to organize themselves and become a very influential power.
Yeah.
While Africa is not united, it's 56 different countries, and it's too small to play in the global scene.
So, Uba, you've mentioned a little bit about China's economic model. Could you elaborate on that a little bit further and explain to us, why China is so revolutionary?
Oh yeah, China is a great case of economic development in the recent past because it's transformed from one of the most impoverished countries in the world to one of the wealthiest in the world. As of now, China is the second largest economy in the world, and it is set to overtake the United States. They were able to withstand an average growth of about 12% for almost 30 years.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. It's not easy to do that. But this growth flattened out from 2010 and it started stabilizing again in 2014. We do not know how COVID is going to affect this, but the model was simple. It was called the Flying G's model. That is, China when made a deal with Japan in 1973 that Japan would outsource some of the work they didn't want to do, like making watches. So, I grew up in Africa in the 1990s, and we'll see these watches called Asai. You remember those
now
wires?
That makes sense.
So now this is how. So as they grew their technology, they asked for more tasks, making computers, then cars, then things like that. And Japan transitioned into being a post-industrial society. So then that is their model. But now in Africa, they have brought this model. And in fact, they're using countries like Ethiopia and South Africa as test factories, which means they're giving them some low-scale industrial work that they don't want to do, where the labor is cheap, and these countries are willing to take it. They also have strong partners where they invest a lot of loans, what called interest-free. We got to be careful about this because it's like China is giving Africa a credit card with unlimited credit card. And if a country is irresponsible, they're going to swipe it to the top.
Yep.
And that's a dangerous thing that we will talk about next week.
So would you say it's a form of neocolonialism, through the debt that they will incur?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about this next week, but there's arguments that it could be neocolonial, that China is actually going back to how Africa was conquered in the 19th century. But if you look at it it's different because what China is doing is opening Africa for commerce. There's about 10,000 Chinese businesses in the continent. 50% of them introduce new technologies that were absent. The rest of the 50 reduces the prices of commodities by almost 40%. So what, according to McKinley studies that I read a few weeks ago. Now, it is neocolonial in the sense that another country is taking over gradually, but it is also not neocolonial because it's trade, which African states now are independent and they have leverage. They can choose to reject and choose to accept. This presence of choice is what makes colonialism different from Chinese model.
And so do you think it will jumpstart industrialization in Africa?
We do hope. It certainly has evidence of doing that in the countries of Ethiopia and South Africa. And, these countries, Ethiopia is not mineral rich. They rely on their huge population. It's almost 100 million. And they're trying to get them jobs so the youth can find something to do. And in South Africa, it's a very complex economy. It's semi-industrialized. So there's need for jobs, seriously, because xenophobic attacks that happen in South Africa usually are squabbles over jobs and opportunities, and they're looking into China to help them with creating industries. In fact, they did create industries in the poorest province of South Africa, that's Limpopo, where they opened up cement manufacturing plant, and they've done quite a lot of those in other African countries as well.
Yeah. And so to wrap it up, Uba, what would you say is the main interest of China in Africa? Would it just be the economic side, or do they want to take part in the political side too?
I would say that China is interested in becoming a global power, at least where Asia and Africa is concerned, and also in the Pacific Ocean. I wouldn't say that China is ready to be a global power in the same vein as the United States or British was in the 20th century, but it definitely wants to control these parts of the world. And if it does control these parts of the world, then it makes it hard for America to penetrate this hemisphere.
Yeah.
And it's doing this by not imposing its values. China has this friendly vibe of, we're not going to impose those Westerners, they're colonial, ignore them. So that's what it does.
Okay.
But what I think is critical for us as Africans to understand is that China wants Africa to be prosperous on their terms, not on Africans' terms. And the key thing, that African leaders and African citizens have to push back on how much of this they want and leverage their power.
Yeah. Do you think that African leaders are equipped or are ready to have that pushback in terms of like knowing where to set the limits of the power that China has on African countries?
I think so. I think the interest of China in global economy as a big player is good for Africa because it gives us a choice. Remember, if you grew up in Africa in the 80s, you only had one TV station. In Kenya, it'd be KBC.
Yeah.
But if you grew up in the 2000s, you had like hundreds of TV stations. China is like that. It's giving us choices. We can go to the Americans, we can go to the Indian, the Turks, and the Chinese. The Chinese are doing the most. They are investing a lot, more than any other countries. But still, African citizens and African leaders have to be careful about foreign interference, because nobody is going to develop your country. It has to be you and your citizen, and that's a key lesson we should learn.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. And so as we wrap up the show today, Uba, do you have any final remarks?
I just call on people to subscribe our show and to support us and to be keen so that next time we continue this discussion on the consequences of Chinese interaction with Africa.
Yeah, so tune in, subscribe.